in full swing. We've got college baseball, but what we really got,
Already summer here in Florida.
I mean, it is, and it's 53 up here in Memphis this morning. But what do y'all got? About 70 in the morning?
It's about, I don't know, national championship perfect this morning. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Natty perfect is what it is.
Client
Every day.
privilege. You like that?
300 more some days of it being perfectly national championship weather.
That's right. And it'll be here before we know it. Hey, we got Coach Matt Dean. We've got John Hartwell, AD at ULM. We've got Gary Harris from Tuscaloosa joining us. And we could have possibly a great discussion, and I know we will.
Did you run out of the cocaine coffee you've been drinking? You seem low this morning. I feel like you're not 100%. Are you playing hurt today?
Oh, no. My voice is just a little bit hoarse because of all the pollen in the air. It turns my black F-150 Ford. It turns it yellow or green. It's so thick up here. And even though I take the medicine for it, the allergy thing.
Well, we get it down here in the old Central Florida. I don't know. Maybe you're just Walter White. I don't know. Maybe it's Breaking Bad and you're just cooking meth. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm waiting for Mildred will bring me my coffee in just a minute.
He needs an extra shot of that Colombian marching powder there, Mildred. Okay.
Bailey's, good Irish whiskey in the morning. Top of the morning to you.
He's a quart low this morning, folks. We gotta get it up. Yeah.
Well, I got up early at 5:30. Not that early, but I was on with two friends of mine, Pierre Landash and Teddy Hughes, who watch the show in Orange Beach, Alabama, praying the Rosary, the 5 Sorrowful Mysteries this morning. So had a long morning. Great day ahead though.
Well,
big day.
Big day. Well, we're not going to waste these gentlemen's time any longer because they've got busy schedules and they don't need to be talking to clowns like us.
That's right. Take a picture with your phone of the QR code.
That moment's passed. So got Mildred, the coffee. Quickly. Get him the coffee. Good morning, gentlemen. How are
you? Good morning. Morning, guys.
Guys, we've all watched what's happened this week. It's been a crazy week with the situation at Tennessee with Nico Iamaleava. And I'm going to start with Matt and then to John. Is that a shot over the bow, a warning? Look, this is what you're getting. And if you can't produce a conference or national championship with what we're already paying you, don't ask us for more money. And if you're going to, do it yourself, not your father and all of his hustle. You know, it's awful what's going on. But Matt, how would you have handled that?
Well, it's good to be back around the table. Or the screen, I guess we call it. Let me just say, I'm not shocked. I'm kind of shocked this hasn't happened already. I mean, let's be honest. You see all the times we're not dealing with amateur sports anymore. You see all the times in professional sports, players try to renegotiate their contracts. They threaten to sit out. The clubs have leverage because they have a contract. In this situation, I applaud Tennessee for sticking to their guns. But John, I'm sure. In your situation, I don't know any specifics, but there's always, we're dealing with cap space on every roster, right? So I'm sure there's some situations in the locker room where you just know you can't pay some player this amount of money. Otherwise, it's going to affect the entire team. So they took a stand. Now, apparently, he's going to go to UCLA. I wish the young man the best. I think what happens is it's no different in certain situations where you're listening to your circle of trust, and he probably is happier to get back on the West Coast, to be honest with you guys, but it looks like he lost money. That's my perspective.
John?
Yeah, let me start out by saying I applaud the heck out of Josh Heupel on this deal. And I got to know Josh. He was the offensive coordinator when Matt Wells was the head coach for one of the years I was at Utah State. He's a pretty much no-nonsense kind of guy. And there is no I in team. I know that's a cliche, but you can't be held hostage by one person. I don't care how good they are. And does this hurt Tennessee long run? I'm sure they've got 2 or 3 more quarterbacks lined up there. But this was a case, and we've seen it quite a few times. The tail wagging the dog, and somewhere it's got to stop. So I applaud Josh Heupel, Danny White, and everyone at Tennessee for taking a stand here. And at the end of the day, I think it's a lesson to other student athletes out there who are trying to maximize their revenue. It's a free society and coaches do it on a regular basis. But hey, be careful what you wish for, because like Matt alluded to, he's going from 2 million to 1.75. And I don't want to get real political about this, but I think the state tax rate is above 10% in the great state of California. I think it's 0 there in Tennessee. So he lost a chunk of change taking a gamble there. So, kudos to Tennessee. But here's the other thing on the UCLA side of it. Not that every coach doesn't have to be a psychologist and deal with kids making different amounts of money, just like they do in the pros. But I think this is a situation. I don't think everybody's going to be holding out their arms and singing Kumbaya with this kid when he walks in the door at UCLA. So it'll be interesting to watch that as well.
Well, the state income tax in California, for the record, I think it's 13.25%. So yeah, it's like when the Grizzlies play the Lakers in California, their paycheck is clipped 13.25. Lakers play in Memphis against the Grizzlies, tax free. They love coming to Memphis, no matter what happens. And it makes it really tough if you're playing for a team from Tennessee or Texas or Florida with no state income tax, and you play in California and you lose and you get clipped at 13.25. But UCLA is the school, correct? That's the final.
That's what we're being told, I think. That's what we're seeing on social media.
Yeah, that's what I saw last night. But everything else, but perfect spot for him. Good spot.
Yeah.
He's from California, and now his brother
down there. It's a good spot for him.
Yeah, his brother Iamaleava was going, I think, to UCLA until he wasn't, and he ended up at Arkansas. Kind of a little bit of irony there, and I'm sure his brother at Arkansas is catching some hell, from people going, "Hey, you better not pull that stuff here."
I don't think so anymore, Rob. I think those days are over. I think you're wrong about that. I'm not. I think that players are backing each other. That's why they're doing this. There's no way that there's guys going, "Yo, man, you just screwed me over."
Oh, I'm talking about
one
the fans.
guy in one locker room saying that to one player right now. They're all.
I'm talking about the fans.
Did you get yours? Did you get your money? It's the culture that they've created in themselves. Look on social media. You'll see it. It's right there. They're all about, them supporting them to go get their money. That's what we've created. We've created this system, and the adults have created this system. So,
the adults.
We're responsible.
But for the record, I was saying he's catching hell from fans, not his teammates. They don't give a damn. They're going to get what they can, and you know what? That's capitalism, and it'll happen until it doesn't happen anymore. All right, Matt, we got this house settlement, and the judge is vacillating somewhat. Can't decide on the scholarship limits and all. What ultimately happens here? Because at the end of the day, it looks like every school is going to have to come up with $21.5 million. How many sports are we going to have to cut to get that? Because we got it. Jacques Doucet was on the show yesterday from Baton Rouge. He said LSU women's basketball with Kim Mulkey, successful program, lost $8.5 million this past year. In the business world, we all understand it. You cannot keep losing your ass, even if you're winning. How are they going to fix that? I mean, are you going to cut women's basketball? If you have a business and it's a publicly traded company, the shareholders and the board of directors are going to clean house on everyone and get that thing fixed. And Title IX stands in the way. And nothing against women's sports, but how do you lose $8.5 million in women's basketball or any sport?
Well, what I've heard, and John can probably speak to this much better than I can because I'm not at that level, but I've heard because of the revenue sport versus some people label them the Olympic sport situation, we could see a future at big places where you almost flip to a Division III model within your department outside of the revenue sports, where you have some sports that may be more of the Rhodes College model in terms of their budgetary funding, And then the other sports that make money, they continue to get their necessary funds to fund, their player pool. And John, I've heard that from some people in your industry. I don't know if we're even close to that yet, but at some point, the model doesn't work for every 21 or 23 of your sports you have in your department.
Yeah, great point, Matt. Couple of items here of note. Right now, as we stand today, and there's been some question about this, but the NCAA has held firm on it so far, and no one has filed a lawsuit on this area. Shocker so far. But you have to sponsor 16 sports to be an FBS football program.
Right.
So for the 134 of us that are FBS football programs, you have to participate in 16 sports. Now, to Matt's point, what he was saying is you've got some folks that are saying, okay, if I've got to live within those parameters and I'm, cash strapped, if you will, I may go hypothetically non-scholarship in track and field. And so for those that don't know this, most places, if you take the track and field umbrella, that encompasses 6 sports. You got indoor track and field, outdoor track and field, and cross country on both the men's and women's sports. So that's 6 sports right there. And you see some people maybe not eliminating all scholarships, but cutting back scholarships in that area to reallocate them to other areas. Obviously, as Matt said, Title IX comes into effect here, but with the increase in the number of allowed scholarships in football at the FBS level going from 85 to 105, the increase in baseball going from 11.7 to 34, increases in softball and other sports, it is a challenge. And oh, by the way, when you mentioned the revenue share number, what's allowable, roughly $21 million. Obviously all of us are not doing that. Not even all of the Power Four are doing that. People just can't afford to do it in their current financial situation. But there are a lot of changes coming. The one thing that appears, and I say this with an asterisk by it, because who knows what changes again, but it appears that Judge Wolkin is not going to back off of the changes to the squad limit sizes effective July 1. So football will go to 105, and you see it. See the one that was publicly done is Rich Rod at WVU. I mean, they have had massive cuts of players and kids going in the transfer portal, and you're going to continue to see that. The football, as it stands, the football portal opened on Tuesday. It's open for 11 days, and I think over the course of the next week, you're going to see more and more kids get in there every day.
Did you all see what happened at Cal? 5 running backs at Cal hit the portal. So I'm listening to my friend Chuck Oliver's podcast last night when I was out, and they're talking about Oklahoma. The Sooners got a big-time back out of Cal. So, and they said, you cannot really attribute that to Brent Venables, the new offensive coordinator. And I knew who they were going to say because he was a Mobilian, still is, Jim Nagy. Absolute badass. And I love the guy. He is 18 years in the NFL, 4 Super Bowl rings. And I asked him on this show several times, are you interested in getting into coaching or whatever? And he loved his role at the Senior Bowl. So I texted him. I said, Jim, they're talking about you. Really? He goes, and he replied back, thanks for reaching out. And he goes, we got better on offense today. I like that. Right to the point. But think about having guys like that who can maximize every dollar that you have. And Tyler McComas from KREF Radio in Oak City comes on here with Chris Plank to cover the Sooners. Said it best. He said, Oklahoma doesn't have Texas money or Texas A&M money. But when they dial in on a player, they'll get all the money that they need. So I think your general manager now is as important as who your offensive and defensive coordinators. That being said, Mr. Hartwell, do y'all have a GM? Have y'all looked at something like that, or how's that going?
We have, but again, we don't have the cash flow here that they do in Norman or some other places. So really, it's by committee with 3 or 4 folks on our football staff, primarily Bryant Vincent. You talk about the GM with the Sooners. It just goes to show once again, all great things come out of LA. And I'm not talking about the city. I'm not talking about Los Angeles. I'm talking about Lower Alabama. But little right. In jest Absolutely. There. But I know you got some Lower Alabama listeners. But the GM role and trying to figure out, and while there's no hard salary cap, you've got a defined amount of money to play with. And, we run into that situation. We were fortunate that this past weekend to culminate our spring game weekend, even though it really wasn't a game last Thursday night, we had a football NIL benefit golf tournament and a Tracy Lawrence concert. He had on a hat similar to Brendan's that he was wearing on stage the other night. But, that generated another $150,000 of immediate money. And you may say, we're somewhere in the $550,000 to $600,000 range now in NIL for football, which again, at our level is not great, but it's at least competitive. But getting that immediate cash influx. Oh, and by the way, with the timing of the portal, we have some carrots that we can dangle out there in front of guys and say, hey, if you don't jump in the portal now, we can give you a $10,000, or our collective at this point can give you a $10,000 bonus or whatever that may be. And, and that's a difference maker for some of these guys.
No, it is. All right, let's switch gears. Football right now, college football, the game. To me, the ratings, the average viewers for the 37 or 41 bowl games we have outside of the playoff games was pretty damn good last year. It was 2.7 million views per game. That's really, and that number was up 14% from the previous year. We look into this year, Matt, Big Ten, SEC, you've got Sun Belt, Pac-12, all these conferences. I was talking to a guy named Harper LaBelle yesterday from Los Angeles, played college football. He's my age at Colorado State, played 11 years in the NFL. And he was back home visiting his mother in Los Angeles last week. And we both agreed those people are miserable with this cross country. They're already and the fans are going, this is nuts. What does UCLA have in common playing Minnesota? And I really think, I know the money is so big, but the Pac-12, had they not botched it, would have never had to do this. And it's affected the Mountain West. John, all this. I won't be surprised if the Pac-12 doesn't get the band back together in a few years, because the misery index is at an all-time high for the fans on those 4 schools alone. And then you look at Cal. I mean, nobody can survive what's happening at Cal.
Hey, you talk about the example of going LA to Minnesota. That's only half the distance when you go LA, UCLA or USC going to Rutgers, or Washington going to Rutgers. Yeah, I mean, there's already some pushback, which you knew there was going to be pushback. But it's there's 2 things driving it right now, unfortunately, dollars and cents, and that is it.
Yeah, I know.
But I do think this is going to be reevaluated by some of these schools at some point. But the buyout amounts, there's a lot to consider. Hey, can I throw one other thing in there, guys, while we're on the topic of college football? This is literally hot off the press. I guess this was done yesterday. But as you talk about viewership in college football, this is really important here. So the NCAA Playing Rules Oversight Panel yesterday made modifications to the injury timeout rule in college football. And here is, under the new rule, if medical personnel enter the field to evaluate an injured player after the ball is spotted by the officiating crew for the next play, the player's team will be charged a timeout. So I think that is a great thing to cut down on some of these shenanigans of
yes.
injuries in terms of trying to slow down the pace of the game. I think it's a really.
What does Lane Kiffin think about this? What does Lane Kiffin think about this?
I hadn't seen his comments yet. This is the official release coming from the NCAA early this morning.
That hot off the presses, Matt, Dean, and Brendan. That's the best news I've heard in a while. Because the shenanigans have got to stop. The fake injuries are so bad that they're as bad as the reviews.
So, John, let me ask you a question about that rule. So, if I'm legitimately hurt, are we getting how's the penalties different? Is it a situation where if basically I come off the field, we're not penalized, for a few plays, or is it just regardless if that personnel comes on? How does that work in terms of legitimate injuries?
It only occurs. So if at the end of a play somebody gets hurt
yes.
and they're down,
yeah,
they'll stop play. But if the ball has been put in play, as oftentimes happens,
I see what you're saying. Yes,
in the last few years, once the ball has been put in play for the next play,
that's a charge timeout.
If somebody falls or acts like they got a cramp or something, then that's when you're charged a timeout.
So on the play itself, that's not a change. It's just after the play when they spot the ball, correct?
That is correct.
Which is happening numerous times. We know that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
hey, I got a couple others here just real quick. I know folks will probably be.
Hey, look, we don't often get this kind of breaking
Here's
news,
another interesting one. This is terminology only. When the decision on instant replay is announced, the referee will only say that the call on the field is, quote, upheld, end quotes, or, quote, overturned, end quotes. The terms confirmed and stands will not be used. So it's just crazy stuff.
I don't even understand what happened. I mean, I'm glad to see the timeout thing worked out because it was literally part of the play to run the route, catch the ball, and fall down and hurt your ankle. So I think that was in the play. It was like, split ride, red 22, fall down, fake the ankle injury, get the guys out, and then call the next play. And I think that had to be done because everybody was doing it because you had to. So those are those housekeeping things that I heard they were going to do something about it this year. So I'm glad. Now, if they could just fix this transfer portal thing, as I'm just watching the news here on Twitter with, obviously Nico's trending to North Carolina, but there's no announcement. As far as I've seen on On3 right here. And then Auburn.
Not UCLA.
Well, it's trending. North Carolina trending for multiple targets, including UCLA is his main top target. Sorry to expand the rest of it. Auburn is also to watch for defensive line prospects. It's kind of like what the portal, people are trying to create the portal news and buzz now. It's like we did with recruiting, right? Now we got to rank people in the portal now. So that was your portal update. Portal report.
That's a great comment.
The potty portal, like the porta potty, whatever it is. Well, that's what it is. Really.
And I asked Brendan before the show about a player, Xavier Lee, to Florida, a visit. You don't know if it's high school or the portal. And now what we have going on here is the portal. Bill Belichick, guys, with Nico Iamaleava. What do you think that conversation would be like with Nico's dad in the room? That would be fun.
Nico's dad and the girlfriend.
I was going to say.
And the girlfriend.
She's the COO.
Yeah. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's the COO of North Carolina.
How do you deal with that, John Hartwell, that walks in? How do you deal with that if that walks into the room? You got father. I'm sure you guys deal with this, both of you. You got a passionate parent, right? And then you've got sort of the right thing and the wrong thing to do. I mean, I guess you just have to get out of the way, right? I mean,
here's the comparison I heard yesterday, and some of you guys may have heard this, that his dad is Mellow Ball's dad without the charisma, and that he's just not.
Woo!
Wow. That is another way of saying that, isn't it?
But guys, and John, I'm sure your coaches, especially in some of those sports that are more high profile, part of all of this is staying away from some of those situations on the front end. The vetting process is really, really important. If I have a meeting with a prospect and I see a dad that's that direct, I may go for the next quarterback on our list. I'm just telling you, hey, listen, he did a nice job last year. He really did. I think one day he'll play in the league. I'm not sure at what level, but I think he'll at least hold a clipboard. That's my opinion. However, part of the process to building a really successful basketball or football program or any sport is just having the right personnel. And at our level, it's still about families. I met with a couple of families this week. You guys don't know this yet, but my job title is going to change next year. I'm going back to the bench. I'm going to be the full-time assistant women's basketball coach. It'll be my 12th title
there you go.
in 35 years.
Love it.
But part of that is, man, when we're in these conversations, it's important to have annual, conversations with the family. And if you see one on the rails, it's not uncommon to say, hey, we're going to go a different direction. There's nothing wrong with that answer. And Tennessee basically decided, you know what, we've had enough, and we got some people in this quarterback room that we like, and we're going to go a different direction. However, the timing hurts. The language in football at that position is vastly different than any other position in football and obviously basketball. So it's going to be interesting how this plays out.
Hey, I would compare it to when you hire somebody. When you hire a head coach or something like that, if they're being pushy as hell and demanding during the search process or during the recruitment process, just imagine when they've got a signed contract.
That's right.
They are going to be relentless, whether it's the kid or the parent or anybody else. And I think you're right, Rob. I think sometimes people are going to say, hey, I may go to plan B because this is more than I signed up for. I don't care how talented the kid is. No. And again, it goes back to the locker room is having a kid like that, especially at the quarterback position, is that going to erode the team chemistry you have? Because we see it all the time. Teams that may not be as talented as others have the opportunity to be successful because they've got better team chemistry and the locker room is not divided. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, we got Gary Harris, WVUA TV, 23, Tuscaloosa sports director, also Tide 100.9. And Gary, welcome aboard. College football season, right now the portal's open. And Brendan just gave us an update. It's getting to be like recruiting used to be with the first week of February. We got 10 days of this stuff. What's happening in Alabama? Because I know Tua, when he came from Hawaii, I think he moved 2 or 3 generations of his family to the Tuscaloosa, Birmingham area. And, if you want to make the wrong decision, ask everyone. Some of these people have 30 people telling them what to do. In my opinion, it's what drove the GOAT out of college football, and it'll drive other coaches out if it doesn't change.
Well, on the Nico situation, and y'all may have already discussed this, it was the same thing when Tua and Talia, in that Polynesian culture, the father is the head of the household until you have your own household. And the father pretty much makes the decisions for the entire family. So I do think in Nico Amaleva's situation, the father was conducting that. I'm glad John's on this morning because I really have a question. I mean, from my perspective, and Rob and you and I talked about this before, probably before I was even doing the segment with you, and I'm not trying to be cute here, but when California was the first state to legalize NIL, I thought the NCAA should have sued and tied it up in court and then had a chance to put a plan in place. And then, when the Supreme Court ruled against the NCAA, the genie was out of the bottle. I kind of was humored by people in my business. Oh, this is the best thing that ever happened. And, these kids have been exploited and taken advantage of, and now they're going to have a chance to cash in on their name, image, and likeness. I mean, this was pay for play from the get-go. Anyone who thought this was going to be Tommy quarterback down at the local car dealership doing a 30-second spot for, selling a convertible, I don't know what world they were living in. So John's an AD. from my perspective, and I don't have the experience that you guys have just from covering it. I mean, I'm just so tired of hearing, well, somebody's got to do something. And now we devalue the NCAA and the member institutions and the office in Indianapolis, and we've, said they were incompetent, which is fine. If you want to operate under that premise, then don't turn to the NCAA now saying, fix this thing. I'm amazed how many people in my business are now saying, well, we got to enforce some rules. What rules are you going to enforce? So, John, where I'm going with this is I keep hearing, well, we're going to do something. We're going to do something. Something's going to change. As an AD, I don't see that from that side of it. All I see is, well, we just got to raise more money to spend more money so we can win. I don't. Is something going to come to change this? Because I don't see anything other than talk.
That's a great question, Gary, and good to be with you this morning. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks.
Here's what, and I think is and this sounds simplistic, but it really is the fallback. I think regardless of what the NCAA does or any individual conference does, they're not going to do that without the NCAA. There's going to be a whole litany of lawsuits to follow. And really the only saving grace, for lack of a better term, is going to be some type of federal legislation. Now, whether Tommy Tuberville and Ted Cruz and Cory Booker and the handful of other guys that have worked on this are able to come to an agreement and get something pushed through that at least puts some guardrails on it, that's the only thing that I see that is going to keep this from just escalating and escalating. It kind of reminds me of when there was so much talk 6, 7, 8 years ago. Oh, these coaches' salaries are going out of control. And this was when they were going over $2 or $3 million a year, not the 10, 12, what it is today. But you can talk about it all you want to. And, ADs can, let's say all 134 FBS ADs, all of us got in the same room. And if 98% of them say, yeah, we're going to hold fast on what we're doing, or we're not going to give, or we're not going to allow our collective to give anybody over X number of dollars. As long as 2% are doing it, you're going to see the trickle down effect. And that comes into effect in terms of coaching salaries, NIL, any of those things. And so I think that's the only way the train is going to slow down, because unless you're not going to get there with, say, probably the top 15 or 20 schools in the country, that donors and people who are investing in the program, 99% of those are very successful business people. And they know that, hey, to make money, you got to invest money. To win championships, you got to invest money, and people are going to keep on doing it.
Well, that's what I thought you would say. And that's because I was thinking this morning, maybe like you said, if the schools just police themselves, but all it takes is one to break ranks. And then you get sued for collusion too. I was thinking on the Nico situation, if anybody, if everybody just refused to sign him, but one thing on the donors, and everybody can chime in. I guess I've taken over the interview, but I'm just so worried about where we're headed. I could see at some point, some of the donors at one of these schools that don't feel like they're getting a return on their investment, just the lead donor telling the other donors, listen, we're done. We're pulling out. We're not giving any more money because we're giving all this money and they're not winning to our satisfaction because you're paying the money to win. So do you think that could ever happen? Because you're right. The people that spend the money that just say, we're done.
Yeah. And you know what? I think there could come a point where schools like Rhodes and schools that are Division II and Division III level, and I had a nephew that played Division III, that played for a year for Matt at Denison in Ohio. And, I jokingly 15 years ago, I used to say, hey, Division III athletics is unadulterated athletics because it's kids playing for the love of the game. They're not getting money. They're not getting a scholarship. They're doing it because they love the game. And I do think there may be at some point a portion of the general collegiate sports fans out there that say, man, I've had enough of this. Let me go back and support and invest in some place where the kids are playing for the love of the game.
That is close, because if you talk to large donors, and the ones that I have, they're like going, I'm going to give this another year or two. And if I don't start seeing some bottom line, big time results, I'm out. And that can't be isolated to a handful of schools that I've talked to. You know it's coming. And you think, Gary, you know the people in Tuscaloosa, and I know a lot of people in Memphis that are Alabama people. Collectively, their net worth is in the billions. I know it. And I don't know how involved they are. I think they're more like, damn, I worked my butt off to get where I am, and I'll support the university, the School of Commerce at Alabama, or the law school. But I don't even give my own kids that much money. See, that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, I think, well, what's hitting people so hard now is the reality of, we've seen it with Nico. I think here at Alabama, they had a situation with Mo Diabate that was similar to the basketball player.
Yeah.
Where they thought they had an agreement. He came back. I think they upped it again. And, and again, I don't know how these so-called contracts work, but it seems like they don't work at all. I mean, if a player, signs a contract, he still leaves if he wants to leave. And I think the reality of the situation is just hitting home with so many fans right now that, however many millions you have for the collective this year for this sport, the next year you're going to want more. And it's just simply a money grab. Kids are growing up now in this mentality where when we grew up, I mean, the thought of getting to go to college on a scholarship and have room and board and the opportunities that you would be afforded because of your relationships with that school and that athletic program down the road, kids were thinking big picture and really not thinking about making a lot of money until they were out of college. Now everybody wants it on the front end, and it's just warped. And I think the next thing that's coming, I think we were close to seeing it this past year, is, and I don't know what school it'll be, but I think you'll have a situation. Some of these collectives will run better than others. And you're going to have a team, whether it's a football team or basketball team, somebody's going to be behind on their payments. And I think you're going to have a team that won't play. I think you're going to have some players get together and say the money doesn't come through and they just refuse to play. I think you're going to have a forfeit this year. I think that somewhere along the line in college football, there will be a team this year that says we're not playing because they didn't get paid. And these collectives, one of these collectives is going to get behind on their payments, or they're going to not have the amount of funds that they think they have. I think it was, I heard from a couple of coaches last year, it was closed. It was on a Monday or Tuesday before a game. There were a couple programs where the guys were in there with coach saying, hey, listen, if this money doesn't come through, we don't get paid, we're not playing. So, John, you ever think that could happen?
That's a great illustration right there, Gary. And the interesting thing with that is, obviously with revenue share, that money is flowing through the university, but the vast majority of schools are going to continue to have an outside collective. Mm-hmm. And if that outside collective defaults on payments to kids and then kids decide not to play, that's where it's going to get sticky, because ultimately the kid playing, that's an agreement, if you will, or part of the scholarship between the kid and the institution. The collective is an outside third party, and that agreement is with the kid. So if that scenario played out and you said, well, hey, you're done. You didn't fulfill your obligation to the university. That's going to be an interesting situation that I absolutely agree could happen out there.
Yeah, Matt, and all of y'all, seriously, this is no different than how the business world works. People are going to start saying 7-5, 8-4 for what I'm paying. I'm out. I'm already having to pay a premium for seats, for scholarship, donor seats, and all that stuff. I don't see how. I mean, it is unsustainable. People saying, well, it's taken away from talking about. We do it on this show every day. We talk about college sports. Don't worry. But on this show, we do get into some more business because we've got John Hartwell, we got Matt Dean, and Gary, you as well. You're there at Alabama. No more passionate fan base. Come on. But try going to these people and keep going 9-4 at a place like Alabama, and you're going to it's going to fall on deaf ears. And so I think when everybody criticizes me, Rob, you're crazy. How's the free market working? The free market is the free right of the donors to say, no more because it's not worth it. And you're right. You grew up dreaming of being a cowboy, loving the cowboy ways. No, but you grew up dreaming of getting a scholarship, room and board. I have friends that played college football at Alabama in Memphis, and I worked with one whose dad was a coach there. He does business in Alabama and correspondent banking. And, he basically got beat up for, his career. He wasn't a starter or anything. But the respect that he has because he has that letter on the wall in his office, and he's got an SEC championship ring. I mean, they're going, you went through all that, that's real NIL. That's like, Joe Namath. I mean, look what he does. He had a bar, I think, when he was playing pro football called Broadway's or something in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, Rob, I want to speak to that because that's kind of where I was going with this morning. The relationships that have been built through collegiate athletics with these schools when you had a time when young men and women came in and they spent 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And then they were, but they spent the normal 4 or 5 years, 17, 18, coming in, 21, 22 going out. Yeah. But there are opportunities that were presented because they were looking at big picture. We were taught that you went to college to build for an opportunity in your adult life. And that's right. And relationships were nurtured and you had a connection to this school. Now you got guys and women going to 4, 5, or 6 or 7 schools. Where's that connection? They better make it on the front end because a lot of them, we're getting backwards here. And two, I mean, again, you guys know more about it than I do. I'm just a sportscaster. But I still don't think the design of college sports is to have people 25, 20 grown men and women playing sports at 25, 26, 27 years old and playing 6 and 7 and 8 years. I mean, what's happened to us? I thought the COVID, and John and Matt may disagree, I thought the COVID idea was terrible in the first place. Yeah. It happened. It's bad. Some of those young people played a nearly entire season, and then we just started giving eligibility away like it was nothing. Now the system, in my opinion, and again, I'm not involved like you guys are, I just think it's messed up, and I hope it can get back on the rails, so to speak, but I don't see it. All I see is a money grab, and every year it's going to get worse and worse. And I know the revenue sharing is supposed to fix that to some degree, but like John said, these collectives operate outside of that. And you're going to have a lawsuit after lawsuit. If you try to cap what these guys are making, these attorneys are lining up. Same thing with Title IX. The first time a women's team is not getting the amount of money that the men's football or basketball team are getting, I see lawsuits coming left and right. I just see this being litigation city, and what we have had for the system that we had in place for over 100 years that worked is gone, and it's not coming back, and I don't know that it's fixable. That's just my take.
Hey, Gary, this is so spot on because we had a meeting this past weekend, our spring game weekend, and had several festivities. We had a Letterman's Club meeting late Friday afternoon, and this was one of the primary things that people wanted to know. And you talk about Hall of Fames going forward. What is your criteria for a Hall of Fame? Is it a 1-year window, a 2? Because the years of 4 or 5 of a student athlete staying at an institution 4 or 5 years is out the window for the most part, and certainly out the window in a lot of cases for high performing individuals. So what are you going to utilize going forward for criteria of nominating or evaluating or electing an individual to your Hall of Fame? That what you said is spot on to that, because it's free agency every year. And that's why you're seeing, I think you're going to continue to see a migration of really talented coaches going from the collegiate ranks to the professional ranks, because really you've got more roster stability in the pros than you do at the collegiate level today, which again, this was not what the intended consequence was, but people can't say there were not warning signs about this.
Oh, yeah, there were warning signs. You know what they were? Wealthy. If you have a lot of money and you give your 18 and 19-year-old kids a lot of money in college, what do you think they're going to do with that money? They're going to go out to Lee's Tomb. They're going to go out to whatever bar in whatever college campus and get messed up as a lab rat. That's just what happens a lot of times if there's no guardrails. So you got to be we think it's okay because we've portrayed these student athletes as victims. And I can tell you from friends of mine that played college football at Auburn, you wanted for nothing when you were in college. I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to tell you, you wanted anything you needed, you got. You didn't. If you at Alabama, you picked the school. When you went out to a bar, people saw you, man, hey, put him on my tab. I mean, come on, man. The life, I mean, you think, I talked to a woman who, when Joe Namath would come back in the summer when he played in the NFL, he had this, I think she said he had an Eldorado Cadillac, one of those long convertibles about 40 feet long. He'd load that thing up and go down the strip. It was riding with Joe. You think he wasn't cashing in on my friend Steve Leak, rest his soul. His father, Buddy Leak, was an All-American, 52 backfield at Oklahoma. Billy Vessels, the coach, that they were out there at Oklahoma, won 47 straight games. He moved back to Oklahoma City in 1979 and kind of cashed in on his name. Holy cow, he sold a lot of insurance. I mean, big Catholic family with 8 kids. But Bud Wilkinson was his coach. And when you get Bud Wilkinson to endorse your business, come on. NIL's always been there, but now we've got people that think they deserve to be paid before they do anything. It's backwards. It's just
NIL has been there to some extent. You're right, because the opportunities afforded, but still there was a system, there were rules, and now there's nothing. And another question I got from Matt and John is academic eligibility. And again, I don't understand how it works, but how is a guy enroll at one school in the winter portal? Now he's already back in the portal. You got guys going to 4 and 5 schools sometimes. I'm not exaggerating in a calendar year, and we never hear about anybody being academically eligible. And I understand there's online classes, but I mean, educationally, how does this happen? How can you, even as a regular student, that's hard to do, much less an athlete. They jump to school, and they're always eligible.
I mean, it's right out of Dean Wormer in his office.
Yeah, I mean, how does that work? How can you go to 3 schools in a semester and nobody ever says, well, you may not be eligible academically?
Yeah. Mr. Awesome. Blutarski.
I mean, what are
0.00.
Are we even trying to attempt to make it look like that this is still about getting an education, or is that just, why don't we just make them independent contractors, make them auxiliaries, and just let them play ball and represent your team and not go to school? I mean, I'm being
well, Gary, this would never happen at Rhodes College. I'll tell you that. So,
well,
but you made a point earlier, and I've been an advocate and I've coached women's sports my whole career. And I think, and John, you may be able to help me with this thought. Whenever this House settlement comes in and we get a number amount that's confirmed, it's going to affect some schools really negatively because they can't meet that number. But at what point do the women's athletes, to Gary's point, say, okay, now we got an equity issue on top of this because we're not getting paid like the guys are getting paid or whatever? I'm surprised we haven't had more Title IX lawsuits already. I mean, I really am on the distribution of this revenue. John, I don't know, I'm sure you have to balance at your situation how that works, but I'm surprised we haven't seen more disparity on the men versus women side of this.
Yeah, I mean, Title IX is coming. I know they've said, hey, it's based on the revenue generation, and that's 80%, 75% is being driven by the football television contracts. But at some point, it's coming around the corner. Hey, I'm going to borrow a page out of Brendan's book right here, because here is a perfect example of what's going on. I just got this too. So this is a wideout, Hardley Gilmore, who was at Kentucky, hit the portal last year, goes to Nebraska. Matt Rule dismissed him from the team, and Kentucky just took him back. I mean, what are we doing? What in the world are we doing?
That's just my question.
7 years of college down the drain, and you're not
it's just, God. I got to go a little early today, guys. I guess that's why I was so aggressive in making my butt. I caught the tail end of that, but again, I don't claim to have the experience. I'm on the outside looking in, but it just, the tail's wagging the dog, in my opinion. I mean, I understand there were years where we felt like student athletes maybe were taken advantage of, But to just give up and have no leverage as an institution or a conference or a governing body now, and you have student athletes and their parents and their agents and their handlers calling all the shots, I just think it's a warped system, and I don't think it can continue. I think it will blow up at some point if it isn't fixed. Maybe this settlement will help. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
I love it. And Gary has a ton of experience because of what he's been doing. Here's the problem we've got. We're breaking every rule of common sense and ethics in the book and allowing these student athletes to still claim victim status. It's just bullspit. I mean, we can't allow this. You know what? Studies make men wise. Athletics make men strong, and character makes men great. Now, if you don't learn it from your mom and dad and your family growing up, it's hard to teach an 18 or 19-year-old. I mean, I remember telling people, if a guy doesn't know how to carry on a conversation about something other than the weather when he's 18 going through fraternity rush, he needs help. But that's where we are. Some of these guys, we got to stop letting people stay in college forever. The NCAA is so afraid. The intelligent people are being told to be quiet so the morons can run the system. And that's the tail wagging the dog. It's like telling someone that has a concentrated equity position in a certain stock, they don't want to sell any because they don't want to pay the taxes. I'm like going, look, you're giving back a lot of your gains. Sell some of it. Don't let the tax tail wag the dog. That's what's going on here now. No one has the balls to stand up in a room and call this what it is, but a lot of it's extortion and blackmail. And when we have the first team sit down and do a strike, like a sit-down strike, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Wait until the fans walk out at halftime and empty a stadium out to make a statement, because that is coming. You think about the people that have supported these schools forever. I had little things, these coaches, they're not thanking some of them. They don't even thank the donors. I heard about an SEC football coach standing right next to a major donor, 40 plus years to an SEC school. Didn't even come over and thank him for what they had done. And that man went over to that coach after that presentation before kickoff and said, this is why you will not be the football coach here next year. You're ungrateful and you're a spoiled brat narcissist. We got to get control of this stuff, guys.
Yeah, and if you look where it's evolved to, because, rewind 6, 7, 8 years ago, and the ability to go from one school to the other, in its purest form, you say, okay, you can change schools if you're going FBS to FBS, but you got to sit a year. Then we evolved, and rightfully so, with some waivers being extended for, if somebody was from Monroe, Louisiana, and they went to Rutgers and mom or grandma got sick and they wanted to be back closer, reasonable circumstances that would grant the waiver to come back closer to home to play and to be able to help the family out. And now, in essence, it's, hey, if you don't think you're making enough money, you can hit that button and be rewarded for that. And that's where the fallacy in the whole thing is. Absolutely. And people who know me know that student athlete rights and well-being are of utmost importance.
Yes.
But the window of time, and again, as Gary alluded to, as both of y'all have alluded to, what is totally lost in this thing is this is supposed to be a time of higher education. It's supposed to be kids getting a sound basis, educational basis to springboard them to a successful career for the next 50 years. And 99.9% of those, it's not going to be as a professional athlete.
That's right.
But we have turned common sense and how it should be handled totally upside down.
Yeah. Well, you think about this. We went on this kick. Everybody, every day, everybody's going to college and get a degree. I mean, if you go get a degree in college in, Elizabethan poetry, I don't know what you're going to do. But I see these guys out here in Arkansas with energy. These storms we had 2 weeks ago, power out everywhere. Those guys have got to be making six figures, especially when they're working overtime. We're upside down. And Matt, when I go on the campus at Rhodes, I automatically think academics more than anything, because everyone I know, including my sweet mother, she transferred from Hollins to Southwestern back then, now Rhodes. She got her degree from Rhodes. So many friends of ours, Lloyd Templeton, so many people, Dr. Dahlgren, all these great people. That's an incredible academic institution. And I remember 14 years ago, we did a big bond issue for your refectory and your new cafeteria.
Yeah.
And it was you couldn't finish the sentence. I've got some bonds from Rhodes. I'll take 200. I'll take 5. I mean, that didn't come by luck. And academically, it's an elite institution. And I remember that year, there were 38 Rhodes students that applied to medical school at University of Tennessee, Memphis. Every one of them that applied to medical school there or anywhere was accepted. You can't. Yeah. That's what we're in college for.
I'm sure John would agree with this statement because he's vetting coaches, hiring coaches, but leadership still matters. And one of the reasons I've been here 34 years, I really believe in our academic premise. And I believe that when we recruit a young man, a young woman, we're talking about academics always one. We hope athletics is a close second, but I got to tell you, there's sometimes on the sorority fraternity creeps in as well because we're non-scholarship. We don't have NIL deals, right? I'll give you a couple quick things here that I thought about the last few days. Number one, I think about Jay Wright a lot, the former national champion coach at Villanova. Two-time. And I think about, 3 years out, Villanova's now on the second coach after Jay Wright. They just got rid of Cal Neptune, and they took away Maryland's coach, which is a very unique situation. But it just shows you, like, Villanova doesn't have the football presence, obviously, that other institutions deal with, but it's always been known back to Raleigh Massimino days as a Big East of basketball school, right? Yeah. And, you have a guy that was only 60, and he said, I have had enough. So what does that mean moving forward? What it means is when John or I hire a coach, my gosh, we got to have someone that can command the locker room. And there's enough adversity in a season. Now you're throwing in the feel of every year is like free agency in the NFL per se. We have to deal with player satisfaction. We have to deal when one kid knows that the other kid got more money. And John brought up a story, I think it was a week or two ago, where, the young man seemed a little different, but because someone was trying to poach him. So there's so many things that are going on in today's society when it comes to sport. I still think when you look at those teams that are successful across the country, there's still tremendous leadership going on. And I look at Coach Saban, and when he got out, the best in the business, he was just tired of dealing with some of this stuff. No different than Jay Wright. And we've lost, and we'll lose more. We've lost a lot of great coaches. And that's why, even though I was pulling for Brendan's Florida Gators, I looked over at Kelvin Sampson in that last possession when the buzzer hit and that tough loss. And I know what probably his kids are doing in the offseason to get better. And I know what their investment is, not just in the money side. I'm talking about what they put in to be great.
Correct.
And sometimes there's some stories out there that we don't tell because we get caught up in the process and we don't like the way it's going. But the product, when they display the product like they did at the Final Four, it's the best thing we got going. So to Gary's point, we got to figure out a way to fix this.
Yeah, we're having to hear about how the sausage is made every day. And when you talk to most people that are successful, that own businesses, first generation employees, second enjoys, third destroys, 95% of the time. Most really wealthy people that are older that I've worked with, a lot of them in 7th or 8th grade had to drop out of school. Family had no money, and they grew up and they didn't have money. It's easy to say money's no big issue if you've always had it.
That's right.
But if you've been without money, it's different. But what we got to do is teach financial literacy is what we've got to be doing, teaching these people. But I think we're going to start having more coaches that are 28 and 30 and 35. And a lot of the older coaches are going to say, this is so stupid, I can't keep doing it. And I think the fans are going to make that. We're forgetting the fans are the shareholders of these universities. And the donors, the bigger donors, are kind of like your board of directors, okay? And as the fans, if apathy sets in at a program, it's over. The apathy will kill you. When fans are mad after a loss, that's good because they want to get better. But we've got to be very careful. The canary in the coal mine is going to be longtime donors and season ticket holders not re-upping, saying, this is stupid. I don't even remember. Ask people, are you giving more money to your school's NIL collective than you are tithing to your church or synagogue or whatever? Think about that. Are you giving more money to kids you don't even know than you are your own kids?
Yeah, hey, Robin, another thing I was just thinking about here is, as Matt, as always, was making spot on comments.
Of course.
And,
yes.
and we've said this before on here, 6 months ago. I don't think we've talked about it lately. Very few, if any, of these issues that we talk about involve college baseball, because there is a minor league system for college baseball.
Right.
If you want to go earn money immediately upon getting out of high school, there is a system to be able to do that in minor league baseball. And I think that's something, I know I'd said earlier, hey, we've got to have legislative, federal legislative intervention. I potentially part of that. Do we look at a minor league for football or a minor league for men's and women's basketball? A minor league for track doesn't really make sense. But again, most of these issues, 99.9%, I'd even say 99% of them are football and men's basketball, maybe, 0.8% women's basketball, and then 0.2% the live dones, people like that out there. But do we look at minor leagues for those that are truly not interested in the educational opportunities and process to go directly to a minor league? And I think that's worth exploring again before this thing goes totally off the rails.
Well, real quick, I'll add to that. And we've talked about this. Lauren Smith brought this up 3 years ago on the show. He goes, why can't the NFL help supplement this NIL? Major League Baseball, look what they do. Okay. That's one of the best things I've heard, because I thought I was kind of out there thinking that, but you got to stray from the pack to figure it out. But I agree with you. You know what? If you're not interested, you're insulting the intelligence of the regular students in college. When you come, and we don't even know, because the virus created a lax rules environment. I mean, women are in college and they're 26, 27. I mean, come on. We've gone. We got to go back to square one. But I agree with you. A minor league for football. And you know what the studies have shown? You ask these people, they're going, man, that riding around on a bus, staying in cheap motels, making $25,000, $30,000 a year, that gets old real fast. And we've talked to a lot of coaches. Three-year minimum in college once you sign a scholarship. Doesn't have to be at the same school, but you stay there for 3 years. Your body's, not torn up with 162 games. You're playing maybe 60 in college. You're getting an education. And a lot of these guys come back after 3 or 4 years in the minors, and that's what happens. So the lesson, remember when Maurice Clarett in 2002 at Ohio State thought he was good enough to go straight to the NFL. Look what happened to his life. And I'd love to get him on this show to talk about it. I've texted him a few times, but I know he speaks about what he did and the mistakes he did. You can make a living with your hands. You can make millions with your mind. Get your education. And we got to get back to that. I mean, Bill Lansden was going to be on the show with us this morning. He said to tell you hello. He used to be at Rhodes. Went and Bill ran
He's in our Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Jim McClelland up in Fayetteville at the engineering dinner last Thursday night. And I put Bill's information down. He was supposed to be on this morning. I'm going to get him back on next Thursday. He works in fundraising and all. He graduated from MUS, me from Christian Brothers. Love the guy. He is a fundraising junkie. He loves this, but he understands what y'all are going through. But that's a student athlete. Okay. You think about people like that and Tim Deaton that went to Rhodes. I mean, I know these guys. They learned, and they didn't play at a Division I school. They played D3, but their teammates and guys like Justin Ross, my friend that played at Rhodes from Drummond's, Tennessee. Yeah. It doesn't matter D1, 2, or 3. That bond, and when you go in a business meeting with someone like that you went through all that hell with, there's a trust factor. Okay, you can trust people. I mean, if you want to live a life that most people want, you got to live the lifestyle and work as hard as most people aren't willing to do. That's the lessons that sports teaches us, and they're invaluable. And great discussion. We got to wrap it up, but both of y'all, and Gary goes, I hope I wasn't too hard. I'm like, Gary, you're preaching to the choir, man. We love you. He was right. I'm a little hoarse today, but the coffee is kicking in my Hewlett and Dunn cup.
Well, Rob, today's been every Thursday is a great discussion, but I think today is spot on, and hopefully the listeners, it's kind of a behind the scenes, but there's a lot of things going on, and at Matt's level or my level, people have no idea the things you're dealing with on a daily basis that kind of are either centered on this topic or peripheral around it, and here's the beauty of it. People love college sports. Yes, we've got issues. Are we going to evolve out of this, whether it's 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years from now? Yeah, absolutely so. But I do think, some common sense and some reasonableness have to happen in this whole process. And again, we are in the education business. And as I tell our coaches and staff all the time, hey, none of us have a job if it's not for these 385 young men and women who participate in our program. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the outside noise and lose focus of that. And I think that's really important for everyone involved in college athletics.
Yeah, and an athletic director is like a hedge fund manager, portfolio manager. You're managing a lot of different sports, and then all the different athletes. They're like stocks that you have inside your portfolio. And
I'd rather
it's so hard.
I'd rather be compared to a hedge fund manager than a firefighter, because there's a lot of days I feel like I'm a firefighter.
That's right.
That's true. That is so true. And I think, what, I think about the influences. I will never forget. There were 3 people in high school. Brother Adrian S. Powers at Christian Brothers High School, who swept Walnut Grove at 5:30 in the morning. When we got to school, it swept the whole parking lot. Brother Stephen O'Malley and Brother Joel McGraw. Think about the toughest people you've had in your life. They're the ones you love the most. Matt Dean, Rhodes College, getting back on the bench. John Hartwell, ADULM. Awesome discussion. We'll see you next week. Let me say something about our sponsors. Landers Ford Memphis, open every day of the week except Sunday. Popper in Houston Levy, where Memphis meets Collierville. $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. If you're interested in doing a trade right now, it's worth the conversation. Ask the general manager at Landers Ford, and the 25 expeditions are in, and they're right down the street from Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. 75% off on a lot of the women's stuff right now, the winter stuff. 50% off as well on some of the men's and women's. But get out there. Great selection of boots, Duckhead, Filson, Barber, STS, Pendleton, Schaefer. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We're the most blessed people in the world. Go make it happen.